Hi guys, my name is Masha Gordon. I'm one of Arcturix UK ambassadors, and I'm here as one of the presenters in the series of Comfort in Uncomfortable Places. Now, I called my webinar Accidental Alpinist. Though today I find myself often, maybe some 100 days a year, somewhere on the ledge or plowing snow or being on the rock edge. I actually have started doing all these wonderful adventures just a few years back. Before that, my definition of discomfort, of physical discomfort, was very much going to the symbol. And now on the screen, you will see the photo of a Soviet gym. I'm Russian by origin, where I, as a child, being 11 years old, was viewing this big gym horse as something completely insurmountable. So that was my definition of physical discomfort, something big, unknown, and something that I had no either mental or physical ability to surmount. Now, in the years that followed, I have discovered completely by accident, actually during my maternity leave, the wonderful world of higher altitude. I came to Chamonix when my son Theo was born, and you'll hear a little bit more about him at the end of the webinar, so stay tuned. And little by little, I started building up skills. So I enjoyed, and here you could see the ledge and the route that is called the Nominata. It's on the southern side of the Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Western Europe. I have learned, and my journey into the uncomfortable was through awe. It was amazing to discover as an adult that very childlike feeling of being in awe of nature that actually managed somehow to prune back the worries, it managed to prune back the fears. And once I have done my X number of hours, and by now probably 10,000 hours on the hill, I learned how to manage discomfort and how to enjoy very much and actually be very much dependent on the dopamine that the outdoors give us. So some 5 years ago, having done a journey of apprenticeship in the Alps, I have embarked on a challenge called Explorers Grand Slam. And I set a goal, kind of in a way, maybe also accidentally. I set a goal of breaking the female record of in Explorers Grand Slam. At that point, the record stood at 11 months. And I have figured out that if I were to repeat the 3 mountains I've already done, and if I were to stack the seasons well, I can do it in 7 months. And the record involves climbing the highest peak on every continent and skiing to the North and the South Pole. Now, I have by that point accumulated enough skills perhaps to scale Everest with Sherpa and the additional oxygen. Yet I found myself, and that's to the point of discomfort, I found myself being dropped on the ice in the South Pole in a complete novice zone. And for me, that was kind of a reminder. It was very much like being thrown back in that Soviet gym. When you land, you're being dropped off on ice. Actually, it's quite awakening because you are left with a sled that weighs more than you. You have to have enough provisions to, I was doing the last mile, so 111 kilometers. You're left with enough provisions to last some 10, 11 days. So the sled typically weighs, I would say 60 kg, so more than me at that point. And, with a pair of very, very skinny skis. So now you can see the picture. So what you do in the polar travel is you hold that sled 1 hour on, 10 minutes off, 10 hours at a time, right? Because you're trying to pace yourself in doing that objective. Now, the first day, the weather, and typically South Pole is characterized, or traveling in the Antarctica is characterized by high winds, Yet, you can gain comfort because in a tent, it's typically you absorb UVs, and it's typically I would say it could get up to 20 degrees Celsius. So you're warm inside despite of being on the coldest continent on Earth. Yet when you're outside and you're a novice, and I was very much at that point a rookie in the polar travel, you actually don't know what the dangers are. So at the end of the day, the first day on ice, when again I felt very much out of my comfort zone, it was not about climbing rock. It was not about climbing mixed with axes that at that point I was quite comfortable with. It was about hauling the sled, and in fact, in the polar travel, it is all about protecting yourself and being aware of dangers. So as I was focused on hauling the sled, I had a curtain. You sew a curtain to your mask, to your goggles, and the curtain is there to protect any skin that is exposed. And obviously, you have cheeks that are exposed. And I was, I think, breathing so heavily while holding that sled that one part of the curtain froze upwards and exposed my cheek. It was sunny, and when you're holding a sled in Antarctica, you actually feel very warm. You peeling back layers. One of the skills actually of getting comfortable in those places, you have to very much make sure that your ventilation works and you're never overheated. So that curtain froze, and at the end of the day, you can see it here on the lovely photo that explains it all. I was left, and I had to treat a Nike burn, a wind burn on my cheek. Now, I was not the only person in our expedition to experience that problem. There was also a gentleman who was completing his Explorer's Grand Slam. It was a Chilean gentleman. Now, he happened to be a Gillette face model. He's a bit, and you meet on that circuit of quasi-adventurers, you meet quite a few people who define themselves quite narrowly. So I was the fastest woman to do the record. He was the man who was shaving. I'm joking and exaggerating, but anyway, this was a problem for him as well. Now he chose to call a plane, and I was, kind of at the end of the day, thinking really hard and having chats with Rob Smith, our guide, whether to stay, whether to go. And, we chatted, and I decided actually to stay and to figure out what I can do. And, Rob next day helped me to tape my face with a pink plaster, very beautiful one, but obviously the one that helped me finish the journey. And he helped me also, he put me behind himself, and he said, well, you're just going to be doing, one step at a time, and you'll figure it out. And I would say on day 3, I found myself with mind that was no longer racing, no longer asking like a child during the car journey, a long car journey, are we there yet? I was levitating. And in fact, during that travel, I came up with an idea of charity that we set up after my record called Grit and Rock, and the charity was and is very much helping to build resilience and endurance of mind using physical and using outdoors. So that is to say, when you feel you're out of your depth, out of your comfort zone in those places, we all end up there. We may accumulate skills on one side of the range, be that, say, mountain travel, or be that hiking, or be that kayaking in cold temps. And then when we're thrown into a part of outdoors that we know least, we again get very much to the point of insecurity. And there it is about breaking down what is it that makes you uncomfortable. So in my case, it was clearly inability to, or unawareness, how to protect myself at the time when I was endangering myself, right, with cold temps and exposed skin, and then very much to how to manage your mind, very much what we require as explorers, or what we require as adventurers or mountaineers on long journeys and long routes. It is about figuring out how you go into that meditative state, and it is then all about movement rather than figuring out are we there yet or when is it going to end. Now, to cut that story short, following my return back from Antarctica, I came. It's a story of setbacks. I came back to the Alps, and I went ice climbing, thinking that would be a lovely thing to do back in my home turf. But sadly, I slipped after the climb, and I ended up on a gurney in a hospital in Italy. You can see here the helicopter that tows me away, and the sad person on that gurney that is sitting there. I've just announced that I was going for Explorers Grand Slam record, and I had to figure out, because I had a plan to summit Aconcagua, a mountain that I already climbed before, but in 30 days' time with a broken arm. Again, there it was about figuring out and visualizing actually one image, and that was the Wounded Warriors. When I climbed Aconcagua first time, I saw a number of veterans. It's actually that and Denali are popular peaks for people who are rehabilitating from traumas to come in very much on a journey, on the pilgrimage of a body or the mind that trumps the body, or the body's failures. And visualizing, those incredibly brave people who were, going often without limbs to the summit of a mountain, helped me figure out a way that, no, I can do it with a broken arm. It's not a technical peak. If I am so worried, and at the end that was the case, that I will be forced to take off my cast because the doctors in the base camp of Aconcagua actually did not allow me to climb with a cast, because they were worried that with the altitude the hand will expand as it does, and I will be left with a constrained blood circulation. Cutting that cast off was, again, a traumatic moment at the end of January, where my climbing partner said, well, hey, don't worry, what are you worried about? And I was like, well, what if I re-break it? I have Everest and other peaks in the pipeline in the next few weeks. And his point was, well, I can short rope you, and and again, finding that way out of discomfort with the help, with the explanation of how, with the plan B of how you can help yourself, helped me. So a few days later, I stood indeed on the summit of Aconcagua, and again, overcoming that period of overcoming things that were uncomfortable, unfortunate, the chain of events, obviously made me feel good and made me feel stronger and prepared me for the maybe ultimate point of my apprenticeship, which was climbing the Cassin Ridge of Denali. But I'll speak to you about that in a few moments. Now, in a few months' time, I climbed Everest. In Everest, I would say it's a journey. It was a part of a commercial expedition, though I was climbing alone with a Sherpa. But you are a part of commercial expeditions in a way that you rely on oxygen, and oxygen is an amazing doping. Oxygen makes you feel lower than where you are. Still, climbing Everest is a big undertaking because of the psychological fear, and it's a fear of the unknown. It's a fear that past 8,000 meters, and here you can see the infamous line over Hillary Step leading to a very crowded summit. Yes, it's all true, and it's all not very romantic. And I've been since to a number of 8,000-meter peaks where the situation was not the same, but Everest is Everest. They're actually the hardest thing, the uncomfortable thing of being above 8,000 meters on Everest is not necessarily a lack of oxygen as such, because you have your canister. Very few people climb without oxygen. Mortality rate of climbing without oxygen is 50%. If something happens to you above 8,000 meters, you're on your own, because it is very, very, very difficult. It takes 14 Sherpas to bring down a body of a person. It is very, very difficult to provide someone help or to seek help indeed. And I think what helped me there was the fact that I accidentally partnered with the first woman to climb Everest without Lydia Brady. Lydia was a guide in a commercial setup that I was a part of. Her client had to go back home due to family circumstances, and she was climbing Everest for the fourth time in her career back then. She has since climbed a couple of times more. She's an amazing, amazing Kiwi. And they're kind of knowing the knowledge that my partner was experienced and effectively surrendering judgment to her. I said, well, look, I will, because the weather forecast changed, and when we had to leave South Pole to go to the top of the world, the forecast was very much iffy. I said, I will surrender to your judgment as to when we should turn, if you think we need to turn. And in fact, that story of climbing Everest will always be associated in my mind with that weight that someone more experienced will say, we have to turn back. And when I saw this line that you can see on this photo of the Hiller step, I didn't know it was Hiller step, I guessed. I turned to her and I asked, is it this step? She nodded. And I started crying. For me, this was the summit moment of Everest. It was knowing that actually we will arrive there despite of the weather that was forecasted to change. But in fact, I think the journey that made me an alpinist and make me fall in love so deeply and develop my passion further with alpine style climbing, and one would say with true alpinism, was the last stop on my Explorers Grand Slam record journey. It was climbing Cassin Ridge of Denali. Now, I climbed Denali a year before. Cassin is I climbed normal route that takes 3 weeks. You hold the sled. You have to provide for yourself for 3 weeks. Denali is known for having very tempestuous weather, so the kind of the topography of the mountain was familiar. Yet Cassin was a formidable, and is very, very much a formidable undertaking for a rookie. I partnered with two very strong climbers from Ecuador, friends who wanted to be first South Americans to climb that particular route. Very few people have climbed it, and effectively, again, one of the ways out of discomfort is to surround yourself with more experience. And as you grow in experience, there will be always, again, other steps, right? So up to today, I climb with people who I can learn from, and that desire to learn very much, I think, helps to overcome problems and to progress. And so Cassin is a 3,000-meter wall. It's a route where you cannot descend safely after the first day. It took us 4 days to climb the ridge. It was the first time climbed after 3 years of effectively no ascents. So there was clearly no track. There was sugar soft snow, and we had food for 2 days of that route because we were, I suppose, more optimistic how quickly we could progress in the terrain. Now, we met bad weather, we met bad snow, and that meant that we had to keep moving, because the only way back to safety and back to being alive was to continue climbing. And there, I think the lesson I learned is that the team is the most important factor in survival, the most important factor in comfort. Going with people you know well. Comfort in others, also something that brings you strength. So as we were climbing this amazing route from day to day, we each have our own points of low energy, and being able to overcome that, and through helping the other was most instrumental. So Cassin for me was baptism in a way, an introduction, end of my journey and the record, but at the end of the day, baptism into the world of sublime, of alpine climbing, where again, the discomfort perhaps grows because you are not surrounded by the cons of the commercial groups. You are not climbing necessarily with a guide that knows it all. You're in a group with like-minded, yet obviously strong teammates, and you have to manage that that level of energy. You have to manage your mental endurance. You have to be able to stay, at times for days on end in a tent when it's snowing hard. For me, maybe the record was flying into the Ruth, into the Pika Glacier in Alaska, hoping to climb a few peaks there, and then spending the next 7 days digging snow. At the end of those 7 days, the snow walls around the tent were some 2 meters high, and clearly we had to conclude with great regret as the sunny day arrived that we won't be able to climb. It won't be safe to do so, and to come up with a plan B. And for us, plan B was actually going to Utah in order to salvage that adventure holiday. And that agility and ability to adapt and always having a plan B, that's not always possible, but with an eye for plan B, is something that helps you feel fulfilled. When you also start climbing alpine style, you are very likely to experience a period of expeditions. And in my case, I think the longest was 5, and I've been now on 30 expeditions in the past few years, and 5 when you don't summit. And that's a horrible it could be a horrible and bitter feeling to nurse. But again, one of the ways of dealing with that is sobriety, that if you are trying to make a first ascent, if you are climbing in the areas where weather forecasting or conditions forecasting is not very easy, this is a very likely outcome, and your probability of success in a conventional sense is some 20-30%. So you have to redefine what that success is and get comfortable with that discomfort. Perhaps one of the most formative experiences for me have been an attempt to climb a peak, a virgin peak in a place called Lantang in Nepal, where I have embarked on that adventure, on that expedition, with a partner who was much stronger than me. It's a very famous French alpinist, very, very experienced, who climbed successfully south face of Annapurna in a 10-day assault, who has opened a number of Nepalese peaks in his time. In any case, we have come to Lantang. We've had a number of setbacks, such as the black crows, heating the tent, our cache with the tent with food, and effectively eating all the freeze dry that we had cached for the summit attempt. It was a first ascent, so we had little appreciation for, as one does, for topography. There is so much you can learn from Google Earth, and there is then the reality of what you can see. But in any case, on the photo here, you can see the little tent that Yannick and I set up at the bottom of the wall at about 6,000 meters. We've had one could say, a horrible night in the tent. We were together with another couple who were attempting the peak as well. Very, very strong alpinist, Jordi Tosas and his wife Blanca. And we were sharing the tent because, again, our tent was damaged by crows. 4 people in a tiny tent on a precipice in front of actually beautiful view of Shishapangma, just across the border in China. Anyway, following that terrible night, where I think we may have had a bit of a carbon monoxide poisoning, and you can see it here, we set out to to climb up the gully than to attempt the bastion, which is the summit of that unclimbed peak. And as we arrived in the middle of that gully, Blanca and Jordi decided to turn back. One of them was tired, and Yannick and I continued. But as Yannick continued climbing pitch after pitch, he became slower. And as I arrived on one of the pitches, he was vomiting and he was very, very unwell. So he had a onset throughout the day, but clearly that culminated in onset of cerebral edema. And being there at 6,400 meters with someone who was very, very experienced, but at that point was very incoherent, and understanding again from at that point, I climbed a number of 8,000-meter peaks, understanding that this is a very serious condition. We are alone, we're climbing alpine style, and actually it's now up to me to help bring both of us back through a crevasse glacier. That was a very formative and very awakening moment. So we've made a pact as to how we're going to do it. So I taught him, I've never, so to speak, led the descents from ambitious territory like this by myself. But again, calling back and visualizing experiences that I've had, having Yannick at that point, though not terribly coherent, but still obviously conscious. Talking with him through the steps that we will be taking, and asking him as we were approaching crevasses to hold me tight, because if I were to fall, we will be falling together and staying deep down there. Then arriving 48 hours later down to the Kanchenjunga, the village from where we started a few days before, was a very formative moment. And that is a moment that part of that confidence and part of ability of navigating terrain that is difficult comes from your confidence. Not believing in yourself, not understanding what you're capable of, actually hurts your chances, because you're hesitant, you're perhaps not as capable of taking decisions, but taking the charge and understand, believing in yourself, and understand actually that you have enough experience, and now that experience has been called to the fore, clearly was very formative for me. So in the past few years, I very much focused on climbing in the Alps, continuing to do some expeditions, and this summer I climbed an amazing route called Integral de Portrait. It's the longest reach in the Alps. It starts in Courmayeur, and it goes on for 10 kilometers through a terrain that is beautiful, but somewhat challenging. You climb, 6 grade 6A, 6B in big boots. You are, traversing perilous snow on the summit of Dame Blanche, and then you arrive to the summit of Mont Blanc through the black or blue ice. That depends on the year of the condition. For us, it was black ice of Mont Blanc de Courmayeur. There was a beautiful climb, a 3-day affair that felt like a mini expedition, because you started on the rock the first day, and then you slept on a col, and then next day you were traversing through terrible rocks that were falling to arrive to the snow, and you ended up clearly in the snow, and then you traversed down to and descended to the train that took you to Chamonix, so crossing the state border. And for me, it was a lovely way of bringing together skills and understanding, actually, and appreciating how much I learned in the past few years of adventuring, of how to manage your tiredness, how to keep your kit to the absolute minimum. And I think one of the ways of being comfortable in uncomfortable places is to be as light as possible, because every ounce of weight you take with you up will have to be matched with an ounce of joule of energy that you will have to expend. And that means that you need to bring either more food or nutrition, or be able to, like Hélène Jourdain, to go on for hours without that supplemental nutrition. So going light is very much one of the ways of keeping yourself in that game. So we had packs, so we're climbing with packs of some 10 to 15 kilograms. We had no tent. You can see me here on this picture in the snow, in just a sleeping bag and one mat. And that was already too much, if you wish, because I had to haul it over 3 days from Courmayeur in Italy to Chamonix in France. Very much hope that there will be snow in the first 2 days. Normally, there's very, very little snow, and you need to scrape it of the rocks to make a boil, to make a brew. So again, not having to carry water was a big plus. So making sure that you match the conditions to the complexity of the route that you have. And I will conclude my webinar about talking about being placed into a different level of discomfort. It's being a mother of a little alpinist. My son Theo, who is now 11 years old, he grew up with me doing the Explorers Grand Slam. He is very much in love with mountains. He loves his gear. He plays with gear and not with Nintendo boxes, but he started climbing young, and you can see him here, a tiny kid, climbing shirtless like Anna Mondra, with more quick draws than he probably needed for that route he was climbing first. But he progressed, and the discomfort that I had to overcome is, how do you let go? How do you deal with a little guy, climbing on the lead? Or how do you deal with the discomfort of a little guy behind you if you're climbing on the lead? You can see him here climbing on the south side of Midi in Chamonix Granite, a route that had a pitch of 6B. And you could see that actually for kids that don't think too much, and that's the lesson we learn, that don't overthink, oh gosh, I'm going to fall. They naturally adjust. You can see here, opens up his legs to the way that I would be too stressed and and too tense. He believes, clearly he trusts the rope handler above and climbs here. And you can see how he progressed over the past few years from climbing sports routes to climbing alpine routes. He climbed this year Gran Paradiso, not a big route, but for someone who had to wake up at 3 in the morning and walk through, numb his mind. And I think for him, the hardest thing of being comfortable in this place is mental endurance, is the approaches that you have to take. And then starting this year to climb ice. And it's been a real joy as a parent to watch that journey, to watch that joy, and again, to get comfortable with the idea that I'm introducing someone who I desperately love and want to protect in a place that could be dangerous. And one of the ways of becoming comfortable with that and making him comfortable and safe is explaining the perils and giving him a few tips on the tricks of the trade as to how we can make ourselves warm when it's cold, how do we quieten our mind when it's terribly boring, but we need to keep going. And how do we get that skill set that allows us then to not to expend much energy and to continue moving to beautiful summits and to beautiful destinations. So I will conclude here. Please follow my journey on Instagram. It's Grit and Rock. And also on Facebook, where you can learn about the foundation that we started following the Explorers Grand Slam. That now includes 2 strands. One is bringing underprivileged teenagers to the outdoors, girls, and bringing their confidence up. And another one is supporting very much women in high altitude and high altitude pursuit, and giving that support through expedition funding to female-led teams or to female teams, to advance female achievement in the high altitude. So thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy the outdoors.